and welcome to Hashtag No Limits. I am your host, Shelley Keno, and Hashtag No Limits is about people whose society has placed limits upon, but who are busting through those limits. Ophelia says in Hamlet, "We know who we are, but not who we will be." And I believe that to be 100% true, and that there is not a better or more beautiful example than the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. Quick science lesson here. When the caterpillar dissolves into its cells, and just when it thinks life is over, it reforms into the butterfly. But that's not all the struggling it has to go through. It still has to fight and work its way out of the cocoon in order to be strong enough to fly. And that can't be easy, I can't imagine, but neither is busting through the limits that society places upon us. And today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is behavior, and how we can parent, as well as, even though I say parenting, teachers, we co-parent our students with their actual parents. And so we're going to talk about some things regarding that today. But before we get going, I want to just remind you to like and subscribe to this channel so that you never miss a wonderful episode again. And also, if you are watching live, give us a hashtag live and where you're watching from. And if you're watching in the replay, a hashtag replay and where you're watching from. And I think that takes care of all the business things. So I'm going to bring on my guest today, Martha Burich. Welcome, Martha. How are you today?
I'm absolutely fabulous. Thanks, Shelley.
Wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. So, Martha, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, you know, I have to begin. Let's go back to the beginning. My mother loved my brothers better. Let's just get it out there. And
Okay.
it has shaped who I became. It has shaped me for years and years and years. And, you know, and part of me, I'm being facetious, but the other part of me, I'm being dead serious. You know, I had two older brothers, and I always believed that my mother loved them better. And one day I was talking with one of them. I think I was in my 30s. And I said, "Mom loved you better." And he said, "That's not true. Mom loved you better." And so we had an argument. And we both had evidence of what showed how she loved the other one better. And I remember thinking at that moment, well, you know, maybe I've been wrong all these years. Maybe she loved us, but each of us in our own way because we're different people. And then I thought, no. Anything that, you know, whatever reason I had, I wasn't successful or whatever, I could always blame it on Mom loved my brothers better.
Well, I kind of have the reverse situation. My brother is older than I am. And not that he says that our parents loved me better, but that I was the perfect child. And so it was easier for me to, you know, get what I wanted because I was never in trouble. And I always tease him back and say, well, I had to follow you and you made so many errors and mistakes and misjudgments that I could make a lot of things and still look perfect. So.
Oh, wow. And you guys are still going at it. You're still going at it.
And we still, yep. But we love each other fiercely and would do anything for the other one. So
that's great.
It's a good relationship for sure. So, all right. So Mom loved your brothers better, but how does that relate to how you got here today? Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, you know, and also sibling rivalry does have its place. A lot of people who are very successful will say because they had sibling rivalry, that's what propelled them to be successful. So it has its ups and it has its downs, like everything else. And how did I get here? I've been interested in behavior since high school. I remember being in high school, wanting to be the next Sigmund Freud. And I went to college and I found out about behaviorism. Wow, was that exciting? And, you know, that, oh my goodness, you can shape behavior. You can get people to do stuff by the way you do things. Oh my goodness, all behavior has a goal. It was absolutely fascinating to me. So I have been on that path for years and years and years. I taught child psychology for 10 years, which was great fun at the college level. And then I became a high school special education teacher for 16. And I used all the information that I had learned and that I put in this book in my classes and teaching my parents how to shape behavior or to get better behavior from their children. So yes, it's of course, behavior is a lifelong quest, but all behavior is goal driven.
That's interesting. I typically say all behavior is communication. So I'm curious. I bet they overlap So I'm curious what you mean when you say all behavior is goal driven.
Well, especially everything we do, we have a reason. We might not even know what the reason is, but let's say your child is you're always feeling annoyed with your child because they always want attention. You're on the phone and there they are, wanting to talk to you. Can't you see I'm on the phone? Just that annoyance, like, oh, it's like I get in the middle of something and then here comes the kid. They want my attention. Then I think I give them plenty of attention at other times. Well, when you feel annoyed, that's how you know the child's goal is attention. So it's based on your feelings. Now, some children want power. Now, this comes a lot. Some parents are very authoritarian. My way or the highway. You do what I tell you. They never let the child decide for themselves. Well, then those children usually wind up wanting power or revenge. If they want power, you feel angry at them. If they want revenge, you feel hurt. You feel hurt by the child. But see, why do people want revenge? Because their bottom line is they feel hurt, but they don't realize that. So you can tell what your child's goals are by how you feel. And then some children, and this is really sad, they display a display of inadequacy that you feel hopeless around the child. The child's like, oh, I can't do that. In fact, I have a story in the Chicken Soup for the Soul cookbook, and it's about a time when I was a substitute teacher in a kindergarten art class. I taught art to all grades that day, but at that moment I was teaching kindergarten art, and we were learning how to draw fish. Oh, so much fun. And to draw a fish is just two lines, really just two curved lines and a dot, basically. And one little boy, the first thing he did, oh, I can't do it. And he just started crying. I can't do it. I can't do it. And I knew to give him attention for that would be to reinforce his whole display of inadequacy. So I said to him, you know what, sweetheart, why don't you just watch your little classmates, and I'll come check on you a little bit later. So I just went off and checked on other students. Well, it couldn't have been 5-10 minutes later. He's like, oh, I drew a fish. I drew a fish. And he did. He drew a fish. So, you have to be careful with display of inadequacy. You don't want to, because what you want to, you feel hopeless. Oh my goodness, I feel so, how can I help the child? Well, one thing, don't do for them, but you have to reinforce them in very, very small increments. So here's a child, you can't even expect them to wash the whole dish sometimes. Just putting the dish in the sink would be like, oh, that's fabulous. I'm so glad you put the dish in the sink. You have to do small steps. They're trying to tie their shoe. I'll never tie my shoe. But if they can get one loop over the other, all right, you've got a great start. You got one loop over the other. You have to really break down those behaviors into really, really small steps. I mean, if they can get pigeons to put different colored discs and different shaped holes, you can get a kid to tie a shoe.
It's so very true. And I think that a lot of what you said, we're coming at it, I think, from slightly different angles, but I do think, your behavior as a goal and my all behavior as a communication are very similar. And I very much appreciate that you talked about breaking down the steps of things, because so often that's exactly all a child needs, or even, not just children, but when we think about, someone who's an adult who has had a traumatic brain injury or a stroke or something to where skills that they used to have, they no longer have. And then we break down the skills that we want them to learn into small steps. And then we incrementally praise each step, and that sincere praise too, what you said, like, oh, you made the loops for the shoe tying. That's fabulous. Oh, you put the dish in the sink. Way to go. That's great. And we have to, I think, give that, and it sounds like you agree, that positive reinforcement. And then we can continue to build on those skills until suddenly they are able to do whatever that thing was, that tying of shoes, the washing and drying and putting away all the dishes at one time, or whatever, like you said, the student who, I was never and am still not a great artist. And I never had a lot of belief in my skills as an artist. And so I probably would have been that little child going, I can't draw a fish. I don't know how to do this. Because if you show me the whole, I don't know how to break down the parts. But if you show me the parts, I can absolutely make the whole.
Yes, exactly. Very good point. And we started class by I showed all the children how to draw a fish. Okay, first we do this line, then we do this line. I had that up on the board for them. But sometimes some children have such just feel so hopeless about themselves. And where does that come from? That comes from people expecting too much from them and not realizing that they aren't at that level yet, which doesn't mean that they won't get there. Does not mean they won't get there, but we have to start small. And who makes mistakes? People who do things. Who makes the most mistakes? People who do new things, different things, people who get out of their comfort zone. So every time someone says to you, "Oh, you screwed it up again," yeah. When did you do this before? When was the last time you did this? And so, yeah, especially if you're trying new things. And I have so much respect for, I learn everything by YouTube. Let's face it, if I don't know how to do it. In fact, my newest thing is sourdough starter. So I went to YouTube to figure out, okay, I'm going to try some sourdough. I'm going to try sourdough bread because I like to break bread, but supposedly it's better for you. So now I went to YouTube and I'm working on that. So yeah, and being in the realm that we are, social media, getting our message out. Oh my goodness. Okay, here's another thing we have to talk about. Look, every day is aggravation. Okay, just face it. Just admit it. Every day you're going to be annoyed, frustrated, aggravated. Something's going to get under your skin. Keep your big mouth shut and just move on with life. Okay, be aggravated, keep it to yourself. We destroy relationships because we think because we're mad, everybody should know about it. No, that's your business. I sit in front of my computer in my office quietly and just say to myself, I've had enough of this. I'm so aggravated and annoyed, but I don't go downstairs and stomp my feet and go, I'm not that computer, and then make everybody else's life miserable. No, I figured out, I get annoyed for a while, but then I think, okay, you know what? There's always a solution. Maybe I won't find it today, but I will find it. So, get your 3 minutes of aggravation out and move on with life. So be that same way, because I remember, early on when my son was young and my poor husband, but anyway, I would be aggravated about everything. And if I was aggravated, you had to be aggravated too, because of course I was always in the right. Her Majesty the baby, Her Majesty the baby. So as parents, we really need to be careful of that, because a lot of us, we have, of course, unfilled desires, unfilled all kinds of stuff from our own childhoods, our sibling rivalry, fear that our parents didn't love us enough or whatever, fear that our parents can't do for us or can't help us or do what we need, fear that we're not popular at school. I mean, just fears, worries, etc. And then we bring all that home. Let me tell you another story. There's a story of a man that he brought a friend home and he stopped at a tree in front of the house and he touched the leaves and he nodded his head and then he proceeded to walk into the house. And his friend said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm leaving all my problems outside the door." That's going to make me cry because I'm not going to bring that home to my family. So we need to grow up and feel the same way. You know what? Those are other problems. My children have nothing to do with that. And even if they do, I have to find a way to communicate to them. All right, we're going to have to find a way to deal with this. You won't take the trash out. I've asked you 100 times. How are we going to handle this? But you have to talk to them at a time when everybody's calm. You can't be screaming and yelling and you never take the trash out. Whether you're whoever you're talking to, you have to be calm and you say, I have a problem here. In my mind, it's your job to take the trash out and you don't do it. What's going on? And then if the child still wants to be that way, say, well, here's what's going to happen. If you don't take the trash out, I'm not going to nag. I've got a sign up, but it's $5. If I wind up taking the trash out, $5 out of your allowance or your job, whatever, you got to pay me because that's your job, not mine. And whenever anybody else does someone else's job, they get paid for it. Isn't that right? Yeah, That's how it goes.
Yeah, that's so much of what you are saying aligns with my same thinking. And one of the things that you talked about is, I want you, I think this should be your job. And I say that to the people that I provide the seminars to is we have to express clearly what our wanted behaviors are. If we don't express that clearly, how does someone know what our expectations are? And if our expectations change, we have to express those expectation changes. I give the example of speed limit signs. When you are out on a highway or an interstate or a freeway, there's very infrequent
Mm-hmm.
speed limit signs. But when you're in a town and then when you're in a school zone, there are many more frequent speed limit signs because they're reminding you, hey, the expectation has changed. And oh, this is a big one. When you're in the school zone, I mean, they're different colors, they're
Mm-hmm.
bigger, they do lots of things to let you know the expectation here is changed from what it was outside of this area.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as we are sharing the expectations with people, I think we have a much better opportunity for them to meet our expectations. If we don't tell
Exactly.
them that, yeah, if we don't tell them, then they're not going to ever be able to meet our expectations. And it's not just, tasks or chores. It's, I expect you and I want you to treat me this way. And I don't want you to treat me this way. And if you treat
Mm-hmm.
me this way, then this is going to be my reaction. So I
Mm-hmm.
so appreciate, like I said, I think you're saying a lot of the same things that I say. We just say it differently,
Mm-hmm.
and that's important as well because not everyone is going to hear it and listen to it the way I say it
Mm-hmm.
or the way that you say it, and they need the other one of us so that they can hear it and listen to it and apply it.
Exactly. There are 8 billion people on the planet, so I think that things do need to be said in more than one way. And
Yes.
Shelley, you make exactly the point. Too often, parents, teachers, um, little league coaches, base scout masters tell children what they don't want rather than what they do want. And the point
Mm-hmm.
with the signs on the highway, they tell you what speed to go. They don't say don't go 70, go 40. No, it says 40 miles per hour here. And so
Yes.
what happens is we tell children what we don't want. Stop running. No, 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 no. We don't put it that way. Walk. Say walk.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an incident of a teacher, and she said, this is the worst kindergarten class I've ever had. I said, what's the problem? I just can't seem to get control of them. I said, well, why don't you try this? Why don't you tell them what you do want rather than what you don't want? So when they're misbehaving, rather than saying stop doing that, why don't you tell them what to do? Sit,
Mm-hmm.
open the book, hold someone's hand, whatever it is, and line up. And she did. She said, I have a brand new classroom. Yes, and you will have a brand new child, spouse, workmate, whoever, if you start
Mm-hmm.
saying what you do want, not what you don't want. In fact, you need to talk to yourself the same way, rather than saying, stop eating so much. Say, all right, I'm going to eat between these hours and these hours. I'm going to eat these foods. I'm going to do this.
Yes, yes. And oh my gosh, I love that. And I'm so thankful that you brought that up because at the beginning you talked about, we can shape behaviors. We can, and some people, when they hear that, think we're being manipulative because we're changing someone else's behavior to fit our desires.
Mm,
Well, yes, you are, because you are then expressing your expectation to the person. But so much of what we do, so many people I know, and I was myself and still am to a tiny degree, a negative self-talker.
mhm,
I
mhm,
was never, I was not, I wasn't good enough. I wasn't,
mhm,
I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that. And when I started to change how I spoke to myself, we have 70,000 thoughts a day.
mhm,
We need to make those thoughts be positive thoughts. I will go to the gym today. I will eat healthy today.
mhm,
I will look at the positive side of life. I
mhm, mhm,
will whatever.
mhm. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
there's literally 70,000 thoughts that we can
right.
turn into
Exactly.
positives.
Exactly, Shelley. And you
And
know
we
what?
can't just say them once.
I get out of bed. Before I even get out of bed, I'm gratitude all day long. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I'm so blessed. With good health. My son is in good health. My brother, my animals are in good health. Just so much to be grateful for every day. And yes, there's aggravations and annoyances. Years ago, I took a auto mechanics class for women. It was a very different time back then. Everybody, I was about, I don't know, 25. And the instructor, he said, look, if your car won't start, it's frustrating and it's aggravating. But if it won't stop, it could mean your life. He said, so,
Right.
we're going to learn how to do things here, like check the oil, etc. But I want you to be very cognizant that your brakes work. I want you to check that all the time. And then I had a driving instructor. This was back in the days. They taught you how to drive a car in school. It was part of school.
Mm-hmm.
Coach Egan. And I remember we were somebody was driving, I think it was me. And Coach Egan said, now you turn on your signal whenever you're going to turn. I don't care if you're in the Sahara Desert and you're the only car. If you're going to make a turn, you put on your turn signal. And I remember that decades later. It made a real impression on me.
Yeah, I also grew up in the days. Well, and actually in the area that I'm in Illinois, our schools still do teach driver's ed during the school day. But
Wow.
when I was growing up, I had an instructor, and my birthday is in the winter time, and so we were up on a hill, and the instructor had a brake on their side of the car. I was driving, and we'd had some snow, and we were in a subdivision, and he said, okay, now I want you to floor it, and I'll tell you when to apply the brake, and then have you, I'll tell you how to react. And I went, no. And he was joking, but I mean, he's like, I got a brake over here. It'll be fine. I'm like, no. I told the kid in the back, I'm like, you want to drive? Because I'm not driving. I'll flunk the class, but I'm not driving, but he was joking, but he also at the same time in joking gave me and taught me that I could say no. And we don't do that enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we
exactly.
don't allow children to say no and share their rationale for why they're saying no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think we have done a huge disservice. I mean, yes, I still had to drive down the hill, but I didn't floor it. And I mean, I went slow and, yeah. But he listened to me, and he said, oh no, I wouldn't really make you do that. But that just, it kind of empowered me to say, oh, I can say no. And if my rationale makes sense, I've been heard.
And a lot of times we lie to children. We're like, okay, let's give some examples. Let's say a child wakes up from a nap, and the child says, mommy, I'm still tired. And then your mom or somebody will say, oh, how can you possibly be tired? You just woke up. Well, that's denying the child's feeling. Right. And that's exactly what happened with you in the car. Is he did not deny your belief and what you wanted. He gave you room to be who you are and to feel what you feel. And so, oh, honey, you can't be tired. You just woke up from a nap. No, that's not what to say. The thing to say is, oh, goodness, you just woke up for a nap and you still feel tired. Is that right? Yes. Do you want to go back to sleep? If there's time, would you like to go back to sleep, or do you want to stay awake? Mm-hmm. And so then give the child some choices if you can, but acknowledge the child. Say, oh my goodness, you just woke up, but you still feel tired. Oh, wow. And, and let me tell you a story. One time, my son's name is Anthony. When he was a child, now grown, he's Tony, of course. But anyway, when Anthony was about, 8 or 10, he went out with a friend and the friend's dad, and they went shopping. And the friend's dad bought the friend a toy or whatever, but didn't buy Anthony anything. So Anthony came home and he told me about it. Well, being, of course, the good mother that I am and was, I said, well, he's not your dad. How can you expect him to buy you anything? Ooh, wrong thing to say, because I didn't acknowledge his feelings. He was very hurt and angry. Yeah. So he said, you don't understand. I'm never talking to you again. And I realized what I had done. And I said, oh, mommy really apologizes, honey. Please tell me again. I promise I'll listen this time and I'll just listen. And he did. He told me the whole story again. He was so aggravated. I said, oh, sounds like you were hurt, that you wished he would have bought you something. And he said, yeah. And then he said, okay, I got to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, see, it's to your point, there was a goal in his behavior. To my point, there was communication that he was trying to express with that behavior. He wanted to have his feelings acknowledged, and that, that's the goal and the communication right there in the same. Right. And what you did by saying to him, I'm so sorry. Mommy messed up. We don't do that enough as parents. No. And I grew up thinking my parents were perfect. And I mean, I had them on this pedestal. They never made a mistake. They never said anything wrong. They never did anything wrong. They never raised their voices. They were just, and it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I acknowledged and recognized, oh, they're human. They make mistakes. They don't do everything perfectly. And
So
they didn't have.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You didn't go through that rebellion when you were a teenager?
No.
I guess your brother did it for you?
I guess, yeah. I think my rebellion came in my 20s, but not as a teenager. Yeah. And yeah, I'm not a textbook kid at all or a textbook person. Most of the things that are supposed to happen according to the textbooks, I don't do. But I mean, they never had they didn't have stringent expectations on me. They always, like for schooling, it was always, well, whatever is your best, that's what we'll be happy with. I somehow got it into my head that if I wasn't perfect, then that wasn't my best. So that was, a whole different thing. But, why I had them up on this pedestal, I don't know. But again, that's something that I teach teachers and parents is if you make a mistake or if you said you were going to do something and then you didn't follow through for whatever reason, apologize for that and try to make it better. Right. Because if we can't be trusted at our word, then we can't be trusted. And I hear so many times from parents, and I've seen this in schools, where we give kids choices. Okay, do you want to do A or do you want to do B? Well, the kid chooses B, and then we go, oh, no, you can't do that. Why did you give them a choice then?
Yes, exactly. That's choices 101. You do not give a choice you're not going to let them have. You only between two benign things, between two things that don't really make a difference to you. You can have the red cup or the blue cup. But if it's something you're not going to let them choose, then don't give them the choice.
Yeah. And even if it's an illusion of a choice, be careful that you're not providing an illusion of a choice. And I've had school districts do that, where they've said, well, you have the choice to either follow the rule or be disciplined. Well, that's not, some people don't feel like they can follow that rule for a varying number of reasons. So is that really a choice?
I hear your point exactly. And for kids and letting them behave and helping them to feel heard, and going back to parents being role models, and we worship our parents. You pretty much have to. When you're a little kid, you have to believe your parents are Superman and woman, because that's kind of the way of the world. And you didn't realize until you were in your 20s that your parents weren't human. Most people, they go through a stage in their teens where they're starting to divorce their parents. And Mark Twain put it this way. He said, when I was 15, I thought my father was the most ignorant person on the face of the earth. But when I was 21, I was amazed how much he'd learned in 6 years. Yep. This is what happens is we have to realize that our parents are just human. But unfortunately, because we go to school and because we have a lot of negative societal interferences, we begin the divorce from our parents way too soon. And when kids are teenagers and adults, they still need their parents. In fact, I lost my dad many years ago, but my mother, when my mom died, then, because my dad was already gone, but I was so close to my mother, and I was really one of those poorly attached children. That's a whole other story. I was so overly attached to her, that poor woman. And, but when she died, I remember thinking to myself, I hope I don't cry. I'm nobody's baby. I don't have anybody to call mommy anymore. Yeah. Now there's just me. I'm all grown up now, and there's nobody for me to go to. And that's tough, and you have to learn to deal with that. But it's the way of the world. It's the way of life, because that's really the way that we hopefully it happens that our parents move on before we do, because one of my brothers did die. I think he was 30, he was 35. And my mother said it was just about one of the most difficult things she'd ever gone through.
Yeah. My dad passed away before his mom did. And I just, that it's what you just mentioned. That's not the quote normal way that life is supposed to happen in our minds. Right. And I unfortunately know way too many parents now, my age or younger, who have lost children. And we don't even have a word for that.
Right.
Because it's such a horrible, horrible thing to have to experience and deal with. So let's get to a happier topic, because that's really sad.
Oops.
Yeah. So there's several ways that people can work with you. And so I want to bring a couple of those up now. So we first have your website with it, which is Martha Burich, and Burich is Burich. For those of you who are just listening, not actually seeing the video. So it's Martha, MarthaBurich.com. And then you have a book, and you've got a picture of it behind you. Yes, you can raise happy, responsible children. So talk to us about your book.
Yes, the book it's only 60 pages, and it's exactly the information that I used. When Anthony, I'll say his name. He's a successful businessman now, but when he was 4, oh Lord, was he spoiled, because his dad and we thought the way that you raise a child is you always say yes. We were wrong. And my mother-in-law once, she said to me, he'd be a lovely child if he'd just take no for an answer sometimes. And, and I realized that it was not going to fly, that he had to be straightened out. And I took parenting lessons, and he changed. Within 6 weeks, he was a whole different child, because I learned how to treat him right. And, let me tell this to parents right now, start today. Say something nice about your child to their face and behind their back every day. And if it's behind their back, hopefully they can hear you say it. Too many times we talk about our children in negative ways, and they hear us. We'll talk to the teacher and they'll say something negative. I'll tell you another story. Okay, so Anthony was about, I think this was 4th grade, and he was a very smart student. And he, when other children would finish their couldn't do their work, they would ask Anthony. Well, anyway, so I was at parent-teacher conference night, and Anthony was there with us. And the teacher said, Anthony's a great kid, but he'll finish his work and he won't help anybody else. So Anthony was standing right there. I brought him right over, and I said, Anthony, here's what your teacher said. What do you say about this? And he said, yes, it's true. I won't help them. I said, how come? He said, because when she gives instructions, they don't listen. And they talk. And then when it comes time to do the work, they don't know what to do. And I'm not going to help them because they should have listened.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So, from his teacher's view, she thought that his behavior was negative, that he was being selfish and not helping others. No, in actuality, he was helping her, trying to say to these kids, look, when she gives an instruction, you need to be quiet and listen, because this is why you can't get your work done. So that was, and so whenever someone says something about your child, you need to have that discussion right there with that person, if possible, and say, let's talk about this, because, we all see things differently. We see the exact same behavior in a different way. You ask 10 people what happened, you get 10 different opinions. And that's why, you can't be all concerned about what other people think of you. There's 100 people in the audience and you give a talk, you get 100 different opinions. So you absolutely, you have to, if I'm doing the best I can, that's the best I can do at the end. If you have some suggestions for me, I had a student one time and he said, I don't like the way you teach. I said, well, I understand that, sweetheart. I got a lot of students here and I can't be the perfect teacher for everyone, but I want you to be successful. So I am willing to do whatever I can to help you, but I need your help. You need to write down how I can help you better. What is it about my teaching that you think I should stop or I should add? And then give me a chance to read that to see if I can do it or not. Well, of course he didn't, because he was just looking for an excuse. Just like we look for an excuse when there's sibling rivalry and mom loved brother better. That's our excuse. Okay, so that was his excuse. Well, the teacher doesn't know how to teach. Right. How come that child's learning? How come that child's making good grades? How come that child? Oh, the teacher doesn't know how to teach. Got it.
Yeah. And, you know, as you mentioned, there's 100 different people in the audience. There's 20, 30 different kids, and they're all going to approach things differently. And yeah, you know, as the teacher, we can reach 80 to 85% because they learn the way that we teach. But then there is going to be, you know, a 10 to 15% or maybe higher percentage that aren't going to learn the way that we teach. And we might have to do something different. And they may not always be able to say what the difference is because they don't know what it could be because they don't know what the options are, you know?
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, and I had at one of my speaking engagements, the surveys that were sent to me afterward, it's the only negative remark that I've ever received. And I truly wish that the person would have talked to me immediately after the engagement, because in reading their comments, I kept thinking, well, if they would have known this, or that's, I don't remember saying that, or, you know, I didn't think I said it in that way, you know, and so I could have had that conversation with them. And that was such a difficult thing for me to deal with because I did. I'm like, but I want to get better. I'm looking for people to explain like, hey, do this or change that or change this.
Right. Yeah.
But if I don't have the opportunity to talk to that person, how can I get any better? You know, just based on what they were saying.
And we have to realize that, you know, especially if you're talking to teachers, if it was an in-service and they're forced to be there, and, you know, there are so many different reasons for whatever might have been on that survey. We just have no idea what the motivation was. So, yeah, if your majority of people are saying, yes, I really got a lot out from this, then you really have to, you want to focus on the good. And, yeah, like you said, if there was nothing you could do about it, they kind of threw something out at you, but didn't give you any ways that you could make it better for them. So what can you do? Yeah, exactly. And you know, it's the same thing. You know, I volunteer at the jail and the treatment center pretty much weekly, very regularly, to talk to the addicts and the alcoholics, to lead meetings with addicts and alcoholics. And, you know, one of the reasons I do that is because I taught high school, Shelley. I ain't afraid of nobody. You probably understand exactly what I'm talking about. Yep. So I thought, you know what, who better to do this, because I've been dealing with behavior all my life. And besides, in a jail, please, you know, if anybody gives you any trouble, the guards always tell me all the time, you know, if anybody ever gives you any trouble, you just come and get us. Yeah, I've never had a problem. Never had a problem. But anyway, you know, part of the reason people become addicts and alcoholics is, one, they love to be the victim, and they don't realize they're the victim. They like to blame everybody else, but they don't see that if it is to be, it's up to me, and they have to make some decisions. But not only that, they can't do it alone. They're going to need some help. So, you know, a lot of things all converge to keep people stuck in places they don't want to be. But if you don't reach out and get help from people who know what they're doing, who've done it before, you're going to stay stuck. And that's in business, in addiction, in health. That's in any area. You know, I lost 50 pounds walking my dog during COVID. And wow, that was, I don't know why I'm bringing it up because that book is half written. And I have another book that's almost completely done for teachers. It's pretty much the same as, yes, you can raise happy, responsible children. Yes, you can teach them all. You can at least make a connection. I had a student, she was totally, what a mess. But she was the ringleader. She was the ringleader, and I knew whatever she said and did, they'd follow her. So I thought to myself, Martha, you need to get this child on your side. And guess what? I did. And she would have lunch with me, and then she would tell me what all the other kids were doing and what their planned bad behaviors were. It was really such an experience to go from the child hating my guts to really, to really liking and respecting me and helping me out. It was very nice. But that's the kind of
Yeah.
stuff that
So
happens when you learn the right techniques and when you learn to appreciate the good in people. You stop looking at all the bad and start looking at, wait a minute, nobody is 100% rotten. Everyone has good qualities. What are the good qualities?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I just accidentally took it off the screen, but you have a Facebook group that you are offering for people to join. And so, do you want to talk about that and talk about that group a little bit more? And I'm putting the
Yes,
link into the chat for the Facebook group, for your book, and for your website. So people should just be able to click directly onto those and be able to go right to those places. But go ahead and talk about your Facebook
great.
group.
Great, thank you. Yes, mastering child behavior. I have some videos on there. Oh, I have one video of these poor parents in a hotel lobby. Oh dear, and I make comments about what they could do to get control of these children. The children were totally out of control. But yes, the group is free, and I also have a link there where you can download a parenting quiz that you can self-score. It tells you your parenting style. You know, there are 4 parenting styles. There's authoritative. That's the one where you give children choices, but you're still in charge. Authoritarian, that's the one where it's my way or the highway. And then there's the permissive parent. Well, honey, what do you think about that? And then there's the total hands-off parent, or really neglectful. They call it neglectful. So you're able to see which one's your dominant style, and then how that dominant style affects behavior in children. It's pretty interesting, and it's very easy. It's just a few simple questions, and you self-score it. And it's free. It's all free on my website.
Awesome. And then you also, which I don't really think I mentioned. So before we move on, though, I do want to read that. So again, for anyone who is just listening, it is the facebook.com/groups/mastering child behavior. And then you have the free report, which I don't think I mentioned before, how to change your life now. And that one has a whole lot of letters and words in it. And I'm not going to read that one out, but I did put it in the chat. So if you are listening.
And it's on my website
ahead.
too. That's on my website too,
perfect.
Shelley. So then just go to marthaburich.com and they'll have the option to
Perfect.
select that on the website. And that's a really helpful little document, because if you want to make some changes in your life, there are some things that you are going to have to change. So it gives you some ideas and ways that you can do that more easily. One of the reasons why when Anthony was 4 and I was able to change his behavior, where other parents, I would come back every week at this parenting class and they would say, how'd it go? I said, oh my goodness, it's working like magic. Oh my goodness. Why did it work like magic for me and not them? Because I didn't give up. I said, you know what? These people told me this stuff works. I'm not hurting my child, or not saying anything mean to my child. And as long as, they said it works. So if it works, so of course it's not going to work the first few times because the kid's like, get out of here. You think
Right.
what? No, I've never heard no in my life. Who do you think you are? Yeah, that's in their little mind. So the longer that you've let them misbehave, the longer you're going to suffer. So let's just, let's just put that right on the table. The child is not, just because you've made a decision, you're going to have to make that same decision again and again and again and again and again, and keep your foot down. Do not relent. Once you make a decision and say, look, I said no, do not change it to yes. So it's just like earlier, you said, we were talking about another topic. Do not go back. Oh, choices. Don't give a choice that you're not willing to give. Don't say no if you aren't serious. If you don't have the backbone to keep it, no.
Right. Yeah. And what that teaches the child is depending on how old they are, they don't really understand the concept of cause and effect as, in its full dynamics, but they do have the basic understanding of when this happens. And so if you have said yes, and when they've exhibited a certain behavior and now suddenly you're saying no, they're like, okay, well, I'm going to have to ramp this up because now what used to happen when I did this isn't happening. And it's not that this is all done maliciously and that they're conniving and that they're, it's just the brain's reaction to, I didn't get that dopamine. I didn't get that serotonin. I didn't get that fix. And so I want that. So I'm going to increase and they'll keep increasing because they're still trying to get that reaction. And you have to, it is so important that you have to stay your ground, because if you've now let them escalate all the way up to here and then you give in, guess what? They're just going to go to that next point the next time. And then if you say no, then you're going to work even harder because they're going to keep escalating, or they're going to do it more frequently. Right. You know, we call that in the behavior world intensity, frequency, and duration. You've got to, and any increase, or any decrease, I should say, if you've got that behavior that, you know, it's been a really big one, any kind of reduction in intensity, duration, or frequency, that's where we praise. That's where we like, okay, you know, yeah, we're recognizing it. I shouldn't say we praise, we acknowledge that it's getting better. Okay, we're not doing this as frequently or as intense or as long.
Yeah, intensity, another word for that in parenting world is suffering. Duration and intensity of a behavior. Yeah, mom and dad are suffering, or the teacher or whoever.
Right. Yeah, so very true. And, you know, we put people through school in the United States, and I think pretty much in every part of the world, it's kind of a legal thing everywhere that your child should go to school. But then we don't have parenting classes. You don't have to get a license to be a parent. You have to go through classes to get a license to drive, or a license to drive a special vehicle. You have to go to, you know, get a degree in certain fields to get jobs in those fields. You have to go to, you know, trades. I mean, everything else has some sort of manual or certificate, and we don't do that with parenting. And then we don't offer parenting classes in most cities, most communities. And if we do, people are like, I don't need a parenting class. If I go to a parenting class, it says there's something wrong with me. And I think we need to bust through that and say, you know what, every community has stand-up citizens. And you know, if we can have these people who are further down the path say, you know what, these are the things that I've done that I made a mistake, and now here's how I'm doing it, and it's working a whole lot better.
Exactly.
I think maybe that would help our society.
I offer a 4-week course. I have a 4-week course on Zoom. It's just an hour a week, but we're going to get whatever the worst behavior is, we're going to get on top of it. Maybe it won't be eliminated completely, but we're definitely going to make a big dent in that behavior and make some changes in your relationship with that child in 4 weeks. Because, you know, and then if you want to continue on after that's a whole nother story, but you should be able to make the biggest and the get rid of the most aggravating, annoying, distressing behaviors within 4 weeks.
Wow.
And that's on my website too.
Awesome. And that was that. Again, that's marthaburich.com. Okay. So I think we've covered quite a bit, but I don't want to end this without giving you the opportunity to, is there something that we haven't covered that you wanted to talk about when you agreed to be my guest today?
Well, I'm so glad that you had me on. And, you know, I want to remind parents, say something nice every day to your spouse, to your family members, to your child. Okay. And, you know, something else I really want to remind all parents, look, I don't know what you did, whatever you did yesterday, yesterday's gone. You know, if you can make up for it, you know, do your best, make up for it. But today's a new day. So if you want to change your behavior, do your absolute best today, because the tree of tomorrow comes from the behaviors that we do today. So if I do my best today, tomorrow is going to take care of itself. So, you know, let go of guilt and shame and all that kind of stuff, and make a decision. You know, I'm going to change my behavior. I'm going to take some lessons. I'm going to, you know, do what I need to do to be the best parent I can be. And things will work out, but you've got to let go of guilt and shame and all that kind of stuff. And you absolutely must hold your children accountable. If children who get whatever they want are the unhappiest people on the planet. People need purpose, and they need to feel that they belong. And the first place we belong is in our family. Family is the basic unit of society. Happy families create happy, peaceful societies. So you want, you know, every week the whole family should work together to clean the house, to do whatever, make meals, whatever it is. Okay, we're all going to do this now. This is your job, blah, blah, blah. What job would you like to do? Everyone needs to be responsible. Don't go following your children around, picking up after them, etc. It is their responsibility. You know, in my household, we leave wherever we were the same way or better than when we were in there. So if we're in the kitchen, if I cook, before I leave that kitchen, I wash all those dishes and put them away. I don't leave dishes in the sink. Nobody goes to bed at night in my household with dishes in the sink because we just don't do that. Do it now. It needs to be, the motto, as often as you possibly can, or plan for when it can be done. Your children need to realize they are part of something, because when they don't feel they belong, they look for places to belong. And parents usually don't like the places where those kids go to feel that they can belong in your family. Make it a good family unit.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So before we wrap up, I do want to make sure that, so where can people buy your book?
It's at Amazon. You can go to Amazon. You have to put the whole name in there. Yes, you can raise. Yes, we can. Yes, you can raise happy, responsible children. Endorsed by Jack Canfield, the creator of Chicken Soup for the Soul. Jack said, this book has the potential to change the lives of families worldwide. It sure changed the life of my family, all the information, and it's only 60 pages. Boom, boom, boom. If the kid won't put his seatbelt on, they don't behave in the grocery store, here's what you do. If you want to strengthen your marriage, here's what you do. You having bedtime problems, here's what you do. You want a smarter child, here's what you do. Boom, boom, boom. So it's an easy read, and it's something you can keep in your purse, your diaper bag, or whatever in the car when you need it.
Oh, well, that's fabulous. I hadn't thought about that. And so, okay, so we've got your book, we've got your freebie, your free report, we've got your free Facebook group. And so there are just lots of ways, guys and dolls, if you want to get with Martha and work with her and hopefully make your home a more peaceful place. She could be the one. And if she's not the one, then you can come to me second. But I always try to promote my guest first. So please reach out, follow her. I didn't put, sorry about that. I don't have any of your social media profiles up here. So
LinkedIn YouTube, and Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. And goodness, YouTube, yep. LinkedIn, Facebook. Yeah, it's Martha Burich. You'll find me. Usually if you Google me, I come up on the first page. So. Yep.
Perfect. So everybody go follow her for tips. Hire her for help, buy her book, and let's just make everything better. As I say, we know who we are, but not who we will be. And we can definitely see that when it comes to behaviors. I think our kids and us, I know caterpillars only go through it once, but I think we go through it multiple times in a lifetime where we're that caterpillar and then we change and we're now the butterfly. And so being able to support that in all situations, I think is fabulous. So thank you, Martha, again, for being my guest today. Thank you for those who have joined. Make sure to subscribe and like to the channel. Make sure that you are leaving me a hashtag replay if you're watching in the replay, or that if you're watching in these last few seconds that you leave a hashtag live. Thank you all for being here, and join me next week. Make sure that you don't miss an episode, because we know who we are, not who we will be, and you want to see who you can become next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Shelley.
Hey, parents and teachers, are you tired of IEP meetings that feel like a battle? Let's put an end to the tension and create a collaborative, calm, and respectful environment together. Shelley Kino, your go-to IEP consultant, can transform your meetings into positive and productive experiences. With Shelley Kino, your child is her top priority, your voice is heard, and you become confident. Shelley Kino is making the world better for all, one IEP at a time. Visit www.shelleykino.com for more information and set up your free 20-minute consultation today. That's shelleykino.com, SHELLEYKENOW.